I'm Alara, 32 years old, and at my husband's annual corporate gala, I was about to dismantle his entire life with a single sentence. He stood on the stage, a champagne flute in his hand, basking in the applause for a project he believed was his crowning achievement. He had no idea that the woman he dismissed as a simple housewife, the woman he had been cheating on for the past year with our maid, was the anonymous benefactor who now owned the controlling interest in that very project. Little did they know about the unassuming black ledger in my clutch, a book that held not just the proof of his infidelity, but the keys to his downfall and my glorious, hard-won liberation. My heart wasn't pounding with fear, but with the steady rhythmic beat of a war drum heralding a victory that was a decade in the making. Please, pause the video and subscribe to our channel. To keep making videos like this, we need to reach 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. Thank you. When Marcus and I first met, our love felt like one of the grand structures he dreamed of designing. It was all sweeping lines and bold promises, a blueprint for a perfect future. I was in my final year of a computer science degree, top of my class, with job offers from major tech firms already piling up. He was a junior architect, brimming with talent but lacking the polish and connections to truly ascend. He saw my mind not just as something to love, but as a tool. I was so blinded by what I thought was adoration that I didn't see the calculation. I willingly put my own ambitions on hold, convincing myself it was a temporary sacrifice for our shared dream. Our dream, I would later realize, was always just his. I became his unpaid assistant, his social strategist, his ghostwriter. I spent my nights learning architectural jargon, proofreading his proposals until my eyes burned, and coding small programs to help him organize project workflows. He would present my ideas as his own flashes of genius, and I would clap the loudest, feeling a surge of pride that I mistook for shared success. We bought a beautiful home, one he designed, but that I managed every single detail of, from the contractors to the finances. I hosted his partners and clients, my charm and intelligence the invisible lubricant for his business dealings. When it became too much, he suggested we hire help. Sophia arrived with a shy smile and impeccable references. I welcomed her, taught her the rhythms of our house, and felt a pang of relief. I had no idea I was personally inviting the termite that would infest the foundations of my life, revealing just how rotten the support beams had been all along. The disrespect started small, a slow erosion of my value in our home. My opinions on his work, once sought after, were now met with a condescending pat on the hand. "Don't worry your pretty little head about it, darling," he'd say, a phrase that felt like a tiny paper cut each time he uttered it. He praised Sophia's efficiency in front of me, comparing it to my supposed disorganization, conveniently forgetting that I was also managing his entire social and professional calendar. The house, once our shared sanctuary, started to feel like his kingdom, where I was merely a decorative consort, and Sophia was a rising member of his court. My world had shrunk to the size of his ego, and I was suffocating, gasping for the air of the life I had so willingly given up for him. My heart ached with a loneliness that was so profound it was physical, a constant weight in my chest. I was living in the beautiful house of our dreams, but I had never felt more homeless. The truth didn't arrive in a sudden dramatic confrontation. It was a slow, creeping poison. It began with a scent on his collar that wasn't mine, a lingering, cheap floral perfume that clung to him after his late nights at the office. It was in the way Sophia would look at me, a flicker of insolent pity in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. It was the two of them sharing a private joke in the kitchen, their laughter abruptly cutting off the moment I entered the room. The silence that followed thick with a conspiracy I couldn't yet name. My intuition, a faculty I had long been taught to ignore by a husband who called it female hysteria, was screaming. I started paying attention. I found a single, long, dark hair on my pillow, on Marcus's side when my own hair is a light brown. I noticed small, expensive gifts appearing in Sophia's room during my weekly cleaning checks. A silk scarf, a new brand of perfume, the very same one I smelled on Marcus. He had always been careless, arrogant in his belief that I was too naive, too devoted to ever suspect him. He was wrong. The final, soul-shattering proof came from technology, the very field I had abandoned for him. He had installed a new smart home system, boasting about its features, its security, its convenience. He showed me how to access the security camera feeds on my tablet, a tool he thought I only used for recipes and online shopping. He never imagined I would know how to recover deleted footage from the cloud server. One night, while he was supposedly at a bachelor party for a colleague, I sat in the sterile silence of his home office. My hands were shaking, a cold dread washing over me. I ran the recovery software, and there it was. Footage from the living room, from the kitchen, from the master bedroom. Hours of it. I watched them, my husband and my maid, in my home, in my bed. The betrayal was so absolute, so visceral, that I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just the physical act. It was the casual intimacy, the shared laughter at my expense, the way he touched her with a tenderness he hadn't shown me in years. In that moment, the beautiful structure of our life didn't just crack. It imploded, leaving me buried in the rubble of a decade of lies. For a full day, I did nothing but exist in the wreckage, the pain of physical entity that pinned me to the floor. After 24 hours of a hollow, waking nightmare, a switch flipped. The grief, so potent it had nearly paralyzed me, began to cool and harden into something else. It was rage, cold, and pure and sharp as a shard of glass. I re-watched a specific clip from the recovered footage. It was from the previous week. Marcus was lounging on our sofa, Sophia massaging his shoulders. He was laughing. "You know," he said, his voice dripping with condescending amusement, "Elara actually thinks this new green tech building proposal was her idea. I let her play with the research, it keeps her busy. She has no idea what it takes to actually build something in the real world." That was the catalyst. The dismissal. The casual theft of my intellect. He hadn't just cheated on me, he had erased me. I picked up my phone, my fingers steady for the first time in days, and dialed the one person I knew would understand not just the heartbreak, but the strategic necessity of what came next. Chloe, my best friend from university, now a notoriously sharp corporate lawyer. I met her at a quiet cafe, the tablet containing the footage lying between us like a bomb. She listened to the whole sordid story without interruption, her expression hardening from sympathy to steel. When I was done, she didn't offer platitudes. She pushed a napkin and a pen across the table. "Cry later," she said, her voice firm. "Right now, we strategize. He thinks you're a decorative object. We're going to prove you're a demolition crew. What assets do you have that he doesn't know about, or that he underestimates?" I thought of my grandmother's inheritance. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a respectable sum, $100,000 that I'd kept in a separate account. When I'd received it, Marcus had patted my head and called it a nice little shopping fund. He never asked about it again. "I have something," I said, the ghost of a smile touching my lips for the first time. He called it my shopping fund. Chloe's eyes lit up. "Perfect," she said. "We're going to go shopping, Elara. We're going to shop for a new company. We're going to shop for his assets. We're going to shop for his entire future." In that moment, a new blueprint was drawn. Not for a life with him, but for a life built upon his ruins. The pain was still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but now it had a purpose. It was the fuel for the engine of my revenge. My secret life began the next day. The woman Marcus saw every day was the same quiet, accommodating Elara. I made his coffee. I organised his dry cleaning. I smiled wanly when he made his little jokes. But the moment he left for work, or fell into a deep sleep, another woman emerged. This Alara was a CEO in training. I converted the small, forgotten guest room in the basement into my war room. I used my grandmother's inheritance as seed money, and with Chloe's legal guidance, I established a shell corporation, registered in a state he would never think to look. The name was my own private joke, Phoenix Holdings. I started with what I knew. I resurrected my old passion for computer science and combined it with the architectural knowledge I had absorbed over 10 years. I poured my energy into the very green tech idea Marcus had mocked. I spent hundreds of hours researching sustainable building materials, energy-efficient systems, and smart grid integration. I didn't just play with the research, I perfected it. I wrote a business plan so detailed, so robust, that it made Marcus's stolen proposal look like a child's crayon drawing. I used a portion of the funds to file patents for 3 key innovations I developed: a self-healing concrete formula, a hyper-efficient solar panel film, and a water recycling system. These were my intellectual property, locked down tight. My days were a masterclass in deception. I would take calls with potential investors in my car, parked in a grocery store lot, my voice low and professional. I would spend my nights coding and drafting contracts on a securely encrypted laptop, the screen glow dimmed, while Marcus snored just 1 floor above me, oblivious. The exhaustion was immense, a bone-deep weariness that I fought off with pure adrenaline and the burning image of his betrayal. There were close calls. Once, he came home early, and I had to shove a stack of financial projections under the sofa cushions seconds before he walked in, my heart hammering against my ribs. Another time, he picked up my tablet and almost swiped to the screen where my company's secure login portal was open. I feigned a dizzy spell, dropping a glass of water to create a diversion. The risk, the secrecy, it was intoxicating. I was building something real, something that was entirely mine. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't an accessory to someone else's ambition. I was the architect of my own. The more my secret world flourished, the more unbearable my reality became. Marcus and Sophia grew bolder. Their affair no longer a whispered secret, but a flagrant display of disrespect within the walls of my own home. His condescension curdled into open contempt. He would criticize the meals I cooked, comparing them to Sophia's simpler, more honest food. He scoffed at my lack of hobbies, blind to the fact that my hobby was a multi-million-dollar enterprise in the making. The dramatic irony was a constant, bitter companion. One evening he sat at the dinner table, swirling a glass of expensive wine, and began lecturing me on financial planning. "Elara, you really need to think about the future," he said, his tone insufferably patronizing. "You have no income, no savings to speak of besides that little bit from your grandmother. What would you do if something happened to me?" I simply stared at him, my face a carefully constructed mask of placid concern, while in my mind I was reviewing the quarterly growth report for Phoenix Holdings, which had just surpassed his annual salary. The cruelty from Sophia was different. It was subtle, a campaign of psychological warfare. She would accidentally shrink my favourite sweater in the laundry. She would misplace my car keys just before an important secret meeting. She started wearing a delicate gold bracelet that I just knew, was a gift from him. She would polish it in front of me, a smug little smile playing on her lips. They were a team, united in their low opinion of me. They saw me as a relic, a piece of furniture that had come with the house, and they were simply waiting for the day when they could throw me out with the rest of the trash. Every smirk, every dismissive comment, every shared glance between them was another log on the fire of my resolve. I didn't need to scream or cry. I just absorbed it all, transmuting their cruelty into capital, their arrogance into assets. They were unknowingly funding their own demise with their hubris, and I was the silent, patient accountant of their downfall, cataloguing every single debt they owed me. The gala was fast approaching, the very event Marcus was planning to celebrate his supposed genius. It would be my stage. The tipping point came faster than I could have imagined. My company, Phoenix Holdings, operating under the anonymous shield Chloe had constructed, secured a massive round of venture capital funding. We were no longer a small startup, we were a serious player. And we had a target. The Viridian Tower, Marcus's crowning achievement, the project he was building his entire reputation on, was a joint venture between his firm and a larger development corporation, Omnicorp. Using my newfound capital, I began an aggressive but silent acquisition of Omnicorp stock. I bought it in small, untraceable blocks through a web of intermediaries. Nobody noticed. Nobody connected the dots. They saw disparate minor investments, not a single coordinated attack. Within 2 months, Phoenix Holdings became the majority shareholder of Omnicorp. I owned the Viridian Tower project. I owned his dream. I sat in Chloe's office, the final paperwork in front of me, and a strange calm washed over me. It wasn't giddy excitement, it was the quiet, profound satisfaction of a perfectly executed plan. Chloe poured 2 glasses of champagne. "To the Phoenix," she toasted, her eyes gleaming. "May her enemies turn to ash." The date of the gala was set. It was a black-tie affair at the city's most opulent hotel, a night to celebrate the groundbreaking of the Viridian Tower. It was Marcus's night to preen, to accept the adulation of his peers. My invitation arrived, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Thorne. I looked at it, and for the first time I laughed. A real, deep, genuine laugh. He was celebrating a project that was no longer his, in a room full of people who would soon witness his spectacular fall from grace. My plan was no longer just about revenge, it was about reclamation. I wasn't just taking back my dignity, I was taking back my ideas, my work, and my future. I spent the week preparing. The Black Ledger, my symbol of power, was updated with the final share acquisitions and printouts of the most damning photos from the security footage. I chose my dress with the precision of a general choosing their battle armor. A stunning, severe, blood-red gown that was anything but domestic. I was no longer the quiet, supportive wife. I was a reckoning. The night of the gala arrived, cloaked in an electric tension that only I could feel. As I got ready, I moved with a deliberate, almost ceremonial slowness. The red dress felt like a second skin, a declaration of war. I slid the slim black ledger into my clutch. It was cool and solid, a tangible piece of my new reality. During the car ride, Marcus was insufferably smug, adjusting his bow tie in the rearview mirror and practicing lines for his speech. He complimented my dress, but it was the absent-minded praise one gives to a well-chosen piece of decor. He had no idea he was sitting next to a loaded weapon. We arrived at the hotel, a swarm of photographers and local media at the entrance. Marcus soaked it in, pulling me close for a photo, his arm a possessive weight around my waist. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. We entered the grand ballroom, a sea of tuxedos and shimmering gowns. The air buzzed with false laughter and whispered industry gossip. I saw Sophia near the catering station, not in her maid's uniform, but in a sleek black dress that was far too expensive for her salary. She was there as his guest, under the flimsy guise of being an event volunteer. She caught my eye and gave me a tiny, triumphant smirk. I held her gaze, my expression a perfect, serene blank. Let her have her moment. The main course would be served later. If you have ever felt underestimated, if you have ever been dismissed by people who should have cherished you, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because you are about to witness what happens when a woman decides to build her own throne instead of waiting for a seat at someone else's table. I took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and found a strategic position near the stage, a silent predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I watched Marcus work the room, accepting congratulations, his ego swelling with every handshake. He was the king of a castle made of sand, and the tide was about to come in. The moment arrived. The president of Omnicorp, a man I now technically employed, finished his introductory speech and called Marcus to the stage. The applause was thunderous. He ascended the steps, beaming, and took the microphone. He spoke for 10 minutes, a rambling ode to his own brilliance, his vision, his tireless work ethic. He thanked his partners. He thanked his mentors. He thanked the city council. Then he paused, holding up his glass for a toast. "And finally," he said, "to a future built on bold ideas and unwavering strength." He never once mentioned my name. He never once acknowledged the 10 years of my life I had poured into his career. That was my cue. I placed my champagne glass on a table and started walking toward the stage. A hush fell over the room as people parted to let me through. My footsteps were the only sound, the soft click of my heels on the polished floor, a countdown to detonation. Marcus stared at me, his smile frozen, confusion warring with irritation on his face. "Ilara, what are you doing?" he hissed into the microphone, forgetting it was live. I didn't answer. I reached the stage, took the secondary microphone from the lectern, and turned to face the stunned crowd. "Good evening," I said, my voice calm and clear, amplified throughout the silent ballroom. "My husband is a great believer in bold ideas, and he's right to be. He's just not very good at having them himself." A collective gasp went through the audience. I turned to Marcus, whose face was draining of all colour. "For 10 years, I was your ghostwriter, your strategist, and your biggest supporter. But I'm sure you've found a new kind of support recently. Isn't that right, Sophia?" I gestured towards the catering station, where Sophia was frozen in horror. On the massive screen behind the stage, which was supposed to be showing the Viridian Tower's architectural renderings, a new image appeared, a crystal-clear still from the security footage of Marcus and Sophia in our bed. The room erupted in gasps and frantic whispers. But I wasn't finished. "That, however," I continued, my voice cutting through the noise, "is just a domestic problem. This is a business one." I held up the black ledger. "Marcus has been celebrating the Viridian Tower project all night. What he has failed to mention is that as of 2 weeks ago, Omnicorp, the primary developer, was acquired. It was acquired by a company called Phoenix Holdings." I paused, letting the name hang in the air. "And I said, meeting the horrified gaze of the Omnicorp president, "am the founder and CEO of Phoenix Holdings. Which means, Marcus, you work for me now. Consider this your formal notice of termination. The project will continue, but under new, more competent and far more ethical leadership." I placed the ledger on the lectern, a final symbolic gesture. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of Marcus's champagne glass slipping from his nerveless fingers and shattering on the stage. The aftermath was a blur of beautiful, satisfying chaos. As I walked off the stage, a path cleared for me as if I were royalty. Marcus stood frozen, a statue of public humiliation. Sophia had vanished. Marcus's parents, who had been sitting at a front table beaming with pride, rushed towards me, their faces contorted with rage. "How could you do this to our son?" his mother shrieked. Before she could reach me, 2 calm but immovably large men in suits stepped in front of me. I had hired my own security for the evening. Chloe appeared at my side, a vision of legal righteousness. She intercepted Marcus's lawyer, who was sputtering incoherently, and handed him a thick envelope. "Divorce papers," she said crisply, "along with a restraining order and a formal offer to buy out the remaining assets of Thorn Architecture for $1. Given its imminent bankruptcy and the public scandal, I'd say that's a generous offer." I didn't look back. Chloe and I walked out of the ballroom, leaving the smouldering ruins of Marcus's life behind us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and corporate restructuring. The story was everywhere: the business journals, the gossip columns, the local news. I was painted as both a ruthless corporate raider and a feminist icon. I ignored it all, focusing on the work. I dismantled Thorn Architecture absorbing its few talented and ethical employees into Phoenix. I met with the Omnicorp board, now my board, and laid out my vision for the Viridian Tower and the future of the company. They were skeptical for about 5 minutes, until I presented my patents and my 5-year growth plan. Then they were believers. Marcus fought the divorce, of course. He tried to claim half of Phoenix Holdings, arguing it was a marital asset. Chloe eviscerated him in court, using his own words from the security footage. She has no idea what it takes to actually build something in the real world. To prove he had no involvement or even knowledge of its creation. The judge agreed. He was left with nothing but his debts and his public shame. I heard through the grapevine that Sophia had left town the day after the gala. He had lost his wife, his company, his reputation, and his mistress in a single night. I packed up my personal belongings from the house we once shared, the house that was now a monument to a lie, and I didn't feel a single pang of nostalgia. I was only taking what mattered and leaving the ghost behind. It has been 2 years since that night. I am no longer Alara Thorne, the supportive wife. I am Alara Vance, the name my grandmother gave me, the CEO of Phoenix Holdings, which is now one of the leading names in sustainable architecture and technology. We didn't just complete the Viridian Tower, we made it a global model for green urban development. It stands tall and shimmering in the city skyline, not as a monument to one man's ego, but as a testament to innovation, resilience, and the power of a woman who was told she was nothing. I no longer live in that cold minimalist house. I live in a penthouse apartment at the top of the Viridian Tower. I designed it myself. It's filled with light, with warmth, with art that I love, and with the quiet hum of my own success. My life is full. I work hard, I travel, I sit on boards for charities that help women in tech. I have a circle of friends who are loyal and true. Chloe is my company's chief counsel and my staunchest ally. Sometimes I think about Marcus. I heard he moved to a different city, trying to start over, but his reputation follows him. He is a footnote in his own story, while I am the author of mine. The anger, the desire for vindication has long since faded. It served its purpose. It was the rocket fuel that got me off the ground. Now, I fly under my own power. I am not defined by his betrayal, but by my response to it. I built an empire not on the ashes of my old life, but from the fire that was meant to consume me. It turns out that a broken heart, when forged in the flames of injustice, can be rebuilt into something stronger and more magnificent than you ever could have imagined. I learned that my worth was never something a man could give me, and therefore it was never something he could take away. It was inside me all along, just waiting for me to see it. If you have ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up, please share your story in the comments. Your journey could be the blueprint for someone else's survival,